Welcome to the drop-in conversation with Tonya Boyd Cannon. It's a pleasure to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited for the convo.
Yeah, well, look, when I think about you, sometimes I go to the first time, I remember the first time we met.
Yeah.
You had just sang at Snug Harbor, and I came and introduced myself to you.
Yeah. Wow.
And from that moment, even that first time knowing me, you had this sisterly, loving spirit, and even protective in the moment. I don't know if you remember our conversation, which we won't disclose, but and I appreciate it, and your energy's never changed since then. So
Oh,
before we even really get into the conversation, I just want to tell you that I noticed that, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you.
thank you.
Yeah.
Listen. I remember and I meet people at the right time in the right places. And as you were talking, the first thing Ashe ancestor, we said first time Roberta Flack. She just stepped up like first time I ever had a convo. First time ever I talked to you.
Yeah,
Having
yeah.
those moments. However, it's moments like right now
Mhm.
that's so nostalgic and precious that we should protect these moments and protect each other because we're in sacred times right now in the world. And so I feel one of those things that I'm often telling myself is I got to protect me and I got to make sure when I'm walking in spaces that God goes before me and ancestors are as well before I speak or do anything.
Yeah.
And so I feel like the drop-in conversation is a sacred moment in time. And so from that conversation, we're now here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love it. Um, I want to start with this question going forward every time I talk to somebody.
Yeah.
When did music first drop into your life?
Oh, music. Music first dropped into my life, I would say, when I was in the womb. I'm a daughter of a preacher's kid, first lady who sings the paint off the walls and can sing down.
So you got it honest.
I got it honest. My dad also sings down. To this day, my parents, I often say, y'all ought to sing together. And they've been married over 50 years, so you can only imagine.
Yeah.
However, I've been singing. My dad told me, and I shared this with my manager recently. I often go back to a conversation I've had with my dad. I'm the baby, and I'm a daddy's girl. So he said when I was 2 years old, I was outside swinging. He had just lost his job, and I was swinging, and I started singing. Have hope, faith, and charity. And then I can't remember the song. However, he would sing it to me,
Yeah.
reminded me that that's when they knew I had the gifts of music. And I say gifts for a reason because I feel that music shouldn't be boxed. And when we think about music, the different drops that have been deposited into music allows it to be what it is today. And so music is healing, and in that moment I was healing my dad through that song.
Yeah.
And to this day, I was 6 and my parents put me in my first talent show. I won first place, and they knew I was singing a song, I May Be Young, which is, you'll hear a little bit of that on my new album coming out. And from there, I've been singing.
Yeah.
I've just been singing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful, and I'm glad that you caught that calling early because we've benefited from it a whole lot.
Yeah.
You know.
Thank you.
As I understand it, you have a connection to the dewdrop that honestly predates me and this restoration process that we did here.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
So I was called, one of my homeboys, Lyndon Jones, an amazing light. He was working with another artist, creative, here in the city, and he was like, "Hey, Tanya, listen, I know you ain't from uptown, you from out that night ward, but anywho, I need you to come uptown." And I was like, all right, cool. He was like, there's a project. He mentioned Mr. Kenneth. He was like, the Do Drop In. And I'm like, the Do Drop In, I've heard about it. And he was like, I want you to come, just come walk through it. And when I came into the building, I remember the stage was over here. And you could hear water dripping, from the ceiling to the floor.
That's how I found it.
Yep, there were columns, standing in. I have. Yeah, the columns in the middle of the floor, and we take a walk out back. The pool. I saw where Ray Charles's room, Ashe was, and to stand. The colors at the time were like a teal, like a eggshell white. that I can remember,
Mm-hmm.
and then seeing like the brown and black, dilapidation happening in the
Mm-hmm.
building. However, I wrote a song called Call It Jazz back in 2010,
Mm-hmm.
and they were like, Tanya, 2008, in fact, they was like, Tanya, we want you to come and just sing in the building.
Yeah.
And even in that moment, the acoustics in this space were profound
Mm-hmm.
because the spirits of the ancestors who had stood on the stages and stood on the floors and walked in these spaces were still present. I walked in today and I could still feel like this
Mm-hmm.
huge, like welcoming chill. And I mean, I feel it right now
Yeah.
because it's such a historic moment in time when we had nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And to now to see this beautiful establishment still here welcoming those same spirits,
Mm-hmm.
being happy to dwell in the same space,
Mm-hmm.
and also come on stage because they've come on stage too and I felt them.
Yeah.
However, the Dewdrop Inn, it's more than a venue. It's more than um, music. It's more than food. It's more than drinks. It's more than laughter.
Mm-hmm.
It is healing. It's
Yeah.
sacred.
Yeah.
And spaces like this should continue to be protected.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel their presence protected
Mm-hmm.
because they don't allow everybody in here.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the right people that they
Mm-hmm.
know will continue the
Mm-hmm.
legacy and the conversations that they started.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Recently, I spoke to a sister. We were in an interview, my manager and I, and she said, sometimes because I have this thing where elders, I love my elders and I have to protect them. And when they transition, it's hard for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm still dealing with the transitioning of those within the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's still, their remnants of energy and laughter still, I'm processing that, right? And now that they're not here in the physical. So I said that to say
Mm-hmm.
the Ray Charleses, the Little Richards that were here in this space, they had to cross over in order for this space to continue to thrive.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the purpose of their gifts.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the purpose of knowing that they were loved
Yeah.
so we can continue to love on them.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that because I wish I could remember who said this, but I recall someone saying, when someone close to you dies, that means that there's something that you need to do,
Yeah.
that you need some help from the other side
Ooh,
to do. And
don't get me in my feelings.
and I feel like that's what happened with, like, shortly before this. One of my big regrets was that my father wasn't alive to see this. So this conversation is not about me, but I had to say that.
He's present.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Give him gratitude. Hey, Daddy.
Yeah,
He's present. He's
yeah.
proud of you.
He's always with me.
Yeah.
He's
yeah,
always with me.
Yeah.
But you just showcased something that I learned about musicians.
Yeah.
Y'all are spiritual.
Ooh, see,
Like
you get me there.
all of you, like, you're a very spiritual person, but like, I've noticed that almost every musician that I really have a conversation with is spiritual. So you touched on things that I already know. My thesis was, when the musicians come here, they're gonna feel something different from other stages, right? And then they're gonna give it back to the crowd. And I've seen you do that, but could you expound on that at all?
Man, listen, I was like, I'm not gonna cry, I'm a thug. I always said I'm a thug, right? I always say that. And my mama said, stop saying that, Tonya.
Yeah.
I was asked a question recently, Tanya, where do you get the energy?
Mm.
And I believe in light. I believe in transferring of energies and knowing when to receive and when not to receive.
Mm-hmm.
And the energy that I give is what I want to get back.
Yeah.
So whenever I step in a space, I never leave my house. And I was just talking to my sister yesterday about being fully covered in the armor of God because so much has been happening, and so many spaces I walk into, I have to be careful because those energies transfer. And I don't want that, as my daddy would say, you don't want that spirit to jump on you.
Yeah.
Right? And so for me, I'm always in prayer, even when I'm singing. I'm always asking God first, because for me, the way I've been shown, and I'm so grateful for my relationship with God, that in order for me to be able to speak with my Orishas and my spiritual ancestors and spirits that dwell, I got to make sure God is first, because I don't want the confusions to happen.
Yeah.
So it's a protocol. So when I walk, after I've prayed, I ask God to allow His presence to be here, spirits to be here. And sometimes they will come out and they will sing and they have their moments with me. I'm a vessel, right? I'm a vessel that I'm allowing them to also use. And sometimes they want to come out and sing and they have their way. I use Uncle Frankie, right?
Will you stop reading my mind?
See,
Let
he
me
just
have a follow-up
stepped up.
question, please.
He just stepped up. Listen,
Yeah.
Uncle Frankie.
Mm-hmm.
So the story with he and I, over 10 years ago, I've been manifesting to perform with him.
Yeah.
I would always say at Jazz Fest, I would always sing on Congo Square. I started singing in Congo Square in like 2015. However, I would always say, I'm gonna sing with him one day.
Mm-hmm.
And the time came last year,
Mm-hmm.
right? Got the call. And the way my manager dropped it in my spirit, it was and came to call me. I'm at my house. She's like, yeah. So are you going to the Frankie Beverly and Mays concert? She kept asking. I was like, no. Why do you keep asking me this? Long story short, she asked me like 3 times. She's like, well, they pick an artist out of every city on tour to sing and give him his flowers. I'm sitting at my kitchen table.
Mm-hmm.
And I said some other words. I ain't gonna say it. And I was like, I had to go sit on my sofa. I was like, hold up.
Yeah.
I'm singing for Uncle Frankie.
Yeah.
I'm singing for Uncle Frankie. And when the time came, we were in rehearsal. In this video on my social media to this day that they reposted, his fans and family. I'm in rehearsal, sound check, and I'm singing, "You are my sunshine," right? And I can hear harmonies, but I'm thinking it's the band because we didn't rehearse the day before.
Mm-hmm.
I look to my right. It's Uncle Frankie. I scream, Uncle Frankie! Like I screamed, and he was just so tickled.
Yeah.
Because they say he never go to sound check. He never come out for sound check. However, he came to mind. And the connection with that man, with that spirit, with that light, he is forever my uncle. He didn't know. And I told him, we were in Washington, I said, you know you're my uncle, right? I said, we call you that in New Orleans. He said, for true? I said,
He's been in New Orleans.
I said, you've been in New Orleans too long,
Right.
Uncle Frankie, right?
Yeah.
And it never fails. I'm so grateful. It's that moment that I had with him, for him to cross over, for me to continue that his love for people, his love for God, his love for music. Is what I learned in that short time, is to continue to love, because that's all we have, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a spiritual thing. My thesis in grad school was talking about that, not knowing my thesis would connect he and I to those ancestors who've always been speaking through me. Baba Duke Chase, he was another one. Baba Duke always loved to dance. We got in trouble at Dookie Chase because they would say we were too loud. If I'm sitting at the bar, he knew to come out. Tonya's here.
You know that's one of the ancestors who performed here.
Oh my God.
We have evidence of it in the groove room upstairs.
Oh my God. And look at how, and it goes back to how multi-generational this place is for, and what it started then, even when you talked about the kids that grew up around here to now, and their lights are still living.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So you said so many things that I want to follow up on. Let me figure out which one. What I've noticed, I've been watching you now pretty closely for about a year, and you are very comfortable in the culture. Now, I want to go back a little bit. You were born in Mississippi,
Born in Mississippi.
raised in New Orleans.
I'm out there from that red clay to the swamp
Okay.
and that night walk.
Yeah, yeah. What I observe is that you're comfortable in the culture.
Yeah.
I've seen you with Mardi Gras Indians. You know the songs.
Mm.
You know, I've seen you direct audiences like a church choir. You can second line your ass off, right?
Footwork.
And not only are you deeply entrenched in the culture, but you are also, I would say, appropriately reverent of the culture.
Whew.
Where does that come from?
I don't know why I'm getting emotional in this moment. Oh. Oh. I feel so growing up, I was born in Jackson. And my twin, I have an Irish twin, my brother and I. My father pastored in Mississippi, was moved. I was born in Jackson. 2 years I stayed there. We moved to Greenville in the Delta, where blues, the Robert Johnsons and all of those greats in the, B.B. King talks about the Delta. For the longest, and I stayed there 8 years, fast forward, came back to Jackson. He was moved again for 6 months, and then we came to New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
For the longest, I didn't know who I was because I moved so much.
Yeah.
So my childhood friends, I never had a chance to have those until I moved here.
Mm-hmm.
And I would hear my eldest brother, who would always say, man, when we moved to New Orleans, we had to get off the porch because New Orleans is female.
Mm-hmm.
She is very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if people always say, how you know, look at all the storms she's been through
Mm-hmm.
and how she keeps coming back, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so
Betsy, Katrina, Ida.
listen, you name it, she's been through so much and she still flourishes.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know what it was because when I moved here, I was called country because I had that twang.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I watched, it was not until I met Queen Marva Wright, Ashe, and Queen Jean Knight. These two women, profound musicians, came out the church, and it was Queen Jean Knight, who's now ancestor, who I was broken into the industry here with, because I sung background for her and recorded her last album. And she would always introduce herself, "Hey, I'm Mr. Big Stuff, Jean Knight, and don't mess with my tutu, Jean Knight." That's how she would introduce herself, right?
Let them know.
And that part. And I watched her and how she didn't take no stuff. Here's this black woman, stood about 5'2", 3", and she was powerful and profound in her moves, slow to speak. However, when she spoke, you knew it.
Yeah.
Queen Marva, same way. In the studio, not knowing who this big vocal woman was, and singing down. And when she spoke, people listened. So I watched. My grandfather, and I'm going to show you how it all connects. My grandfather, Black Native Indian out of Mississippi. His mama would go in the woods. They would call her the Black Witch because she had the gifts and knew how to communicate. So when I learned about the Maskin Indian, Black Maskin Indians, I'm like, oh, they're paying homage to our natives. And I'm watching how they would tirelessly make their suits, sit there and bead, hands would wet, blood, calluses they're building. And I'm watching how they would continue the journey and would not stray away from the assignment.
Right.
Then I would see the brass bands and the elders, how they would walk up and elders who were younger than them would bow to them. And I'm sitting here saying, okay, it makes sense. And it was the hands. I always watch hands. I don't know what it is with hands. For me and seeing my grandfather's hands, the wrinkles, however, the nails, the pristine, their nails was just so beautiful, clean. And I would just watch their hands. That would made me understand that culture is not just in one space. Culture is who we are. And when I began to do the work of where my bloodline started in Nigeria and Ghana, then it went over to Ireland because I'm 11% Irish. Then it came
Thanks to 23andMe or
that
Ancestry.com.
23andMe, right?
Yeah.
So doing that research and then going over to the Caribbean. And now here we are in the States.
Yeah.
So when I started to put these pieces together, at the age of 10, I was taught a song. Obiko friend na yami mami. Obiko friend na yami mami. Yami ne ye ni nada. Odore mi. Obi ama braba suno romne ama bra. Which means give God the praise in Warlof. I learned that at 10, and that song still rings over 30 years now.
Yeah.
I sung that to my grandbaby when she was in the room. So I sing that to her now. So when I sing, she smiles because she know that's her song. I gave God praise in a different language. To this day, when I ask those of different cultures of Africa, and it took a mother to say, you're singing in Wolof, it's a hidden language. And so it's all of that, right? Never been to Nigeria yet. However, look at how the culture still lives here. Then when you think about when they say, Shalom, mama, fire in the hole, baby, we coming through.
Yeah.
We coming through. We coming with something. I need you to move. And that's not just, you know, we talk about the war, how it was started in the past. We're showing our suits. Now we're going to show you how we come together because together we are culture.
Yeah.
And so when I would watch it, I'm standing back watching, all I would see was the color red, which took me back to the red clay. And so all the connections of when I hear drum, it hits me. And I have to stand and give respect to those who would drum and how that drum beat still beats within me.
Yeah.
So I will never deny where I come from because I won't know where I'm going.
Right.
So when I walk in spaces and I walk around this city and I could hear them where they once were and where they still are. And so I pray that I continue to give respect and honor, that when I do walk and I am speaking and I am bowing to ancestors and elders, that they know it's from the purest place of where I come from, which is from them.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I'm gonna make a quick little segue and give you have you read My Grandmother's Hand?
No.
So as you mentioned, hands, and he talks about his experience with his grandmother's hands, touching them. Why are they so coarse? It was from picking cotton. The book is about epigenetic trauma.
I need that.
Off the subject a little bit, but I
But no,
want to make that recommendation.
But that's on the subject. You know why? Because we don't talk about the mental health aspect of that, right? And why we have so many. I'm just going to say it. There's a documentary that talks about the mother coma and father coma in the Black families because the father wasn't there or the mother wasn't there. And so we go through generations of hurt and pain, not realizing where it comes from. And for that hand, I'm getting it. I got to get it. I got to get it because that's also a beautiful way of us healing and knowing that our mental health is our mental wealth, of why grandmama went out there and picked that cotton.
Absolutely.
Because if it wasn't for grandmama, nobody could wear any fashion that they have today because it was our ancestors.
That's right.
That made sure that they had the fabric.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
We're powerful.
Yeah. I'm gonna go back to something you said that you alluded to. You talked about going to graduate school. I know that you had your graduation party here last year.
Yes.
Right? So later in life, you already had a blossoming career that most people would be proud to say, I'm done and I've done a great job. What made you go back to school and say, I'm gonna hone these skills? What'd you go to school for?
Okay.
And what benefit have you seen from that? Why'd you do it?
So I'm the proud graduate, the first Black female graduate of Tulane University's Black American Music Program, which was started by Nicholas Payton and your own Dr. Jesse McBride, who's here, right? And I say Dr. Jesse McBride because he often say, Tonya, Dr. Boyd Cannon. And so we joke about that. However, they came together because there was a lack in education of our music and how Black American music is American music.
Yeah.
Everything that you hear is Black American music. And Jesse would always say, Tonya, you got to do the program. You got to do the program. You got to do the program. We're starting it. I need you to be the first student. I need you to be in it.
Yeah.
And when I started the program, there's a course you have to take, Intro to Graduate Studies with Dr. Maka Sakakini. And it's basically just a general program. However, the program, probably the first few weeks, we get into the story about Brock Coupe, who was a slave,
Okay.
right? Brock Coupe was from Louisiana, and he was the Superman slave because this brother, and I hope I'm saying this right, so they cut off a part of his body because Brock Coupe knew how to escape slavery, and he would go out and celebrate and would come back like nothing ever happened. Like he had the ingeniousness then to be able to survive, right? And I learned about the history of Congo Square even more and how in depth it was. How ancestors would go on Sundays, still to this day would go on Sundays and drum and celebrate. However, you can also buy your freedom. And they will only have like 1 or 2 slots available during the Black Code Noir to buy your freedom at Congo Square. Brock Coupe was one of them trying to get his thing, get my freedom. And so I'm sitting in this class and I'm watching how powerful we were then and how a lot of people may not even know the history of how powerful we were and how powerful we still are, right? And I'm sitting in this, going to class, and even during that time, going through some tumultuous times in my life, mental psychosis at that time, and just issues that were arising. And I said, God, if it's for you, if it's for me to finish, just show me. And I realized, because I've always wanted to be Dr. Tonya Boy Cannon. I don't know why. Because I'm going back to school now to get my doctorate. In what? I don't know. I'm creating something.
All right.
And so I feel like there's always been a need for incubators of information around the cities, around the world, that we as a culture of people should be able to go to. And I've always wanted to create these incubators. However, I want to have the studies behind it of why the importance of it, right? Because we could do a research. We could look at, the lacks and the different statistics of needs in Black communities. However, what are the major needs that need to take place that we're afraid of? One is mental health. However, we have music venues, we have bars, we have all of these, the things that are debilitating for our Black families. However, where are the things that we need to help us build? Where are the grocery stores that have fresh produce? Where are the libraries? Where are the communities where we can go and get the mental health, go to the doctors, go to the dentist? And I've always wanted to just create incubators of these spaces. It started back after Katrina, I would tell you that, because I did a program through Tipitina's. And when Gmail was first starting, Google created a think tank for musicians to come and learn about Gmail, learn about Google Sites, learn about some of the new things that are happening now with Google. I did that probably 15, 20 years ago.
Wow.
And so I watched that and I was like, who's doing that for our communities? Because back in the days, we had Yaya, we had brother. What is it? What was the hand? Brother, sister. I can't think of the. What's the club?
Boys Club.
Boys clubs. You had those boys and girls clubs they would go to. You had after school programming. We don't really have that.
Right.
And so I want to continue my learning so I can continue to be a student of communities. Continue to be a student of culture, of what's lacking. And I say this to this day, I've been in education for over 20 years. You can give me a classroom of some of what's considered the worst kids in the world. Once I give them a meal and a space to talk, you'll learn that they're not a problem. They just want to be heard.
Right.
And so I feel like that's what's missing in our communities. Everyone wants to be heard, however, nobody's really talking. And so I went back to school to learn more of artists who were able, to this day, we sing and listen, we sing their songs, we listen to their music. However, they were never given spaces to be heard about how they were dealing with mental illnesses, how they were hurting because they didn't have family to talk to, how they were just being used to get a check because they produced a song, they released this, they could shake, they could do that.
Yeah.
There was more to them.
Yeah.
They were spiritual. And why weren't they given space to be free?
Yeah.
You know, why were they murdered? Because they were murdered. Some were murdered because of their gifts and talents. Why did they take their lives?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so I feel that there's a huge space, a void that we're really not talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And one is the music and the mind and how they work. There's a book that talks about music in the mind and how it works. However, when we start to look at the different breakdowns of nationalities and how it really affects us in a good and a bad way,
Mm-hmm.
because we're just not given spaces to heal like we need to.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's my calling, to really create spaces and incubators of healing.
Yeah. You mentioned student. I want to acknowledge you're also a steward. And that's something that is just naturally a part of who you are. Another
Thank you.
question that comes to mind is besides music, and you probably answered this somewhere, but I'm going to ask it to you succinctly. What are you passionate about besides music?
What am I passionate about besides music? People. Like, I love people.
Mm-hmm.
I love, like, my manager laughed because we'll probably go 2 or 3 days and she'll send me the eyes emoji, like, where you at?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's going on? Because I was shut down, right? And I have to shut down so I can recharge.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm always around people, and I love my people. I love people in general, right? Especially babies.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm around people, I get fueled sometimes a lot, that it's overwhelming,
Mm-hmm.
that I have to pull away.
Yeah.
So I'm passionate about people and also my healing while being around people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm passionate about food. I love food. I'm a foodie.
Mm-hmm.
I'm passionate about cooking.
Yeah.
I never, so, and when I say this with from the most sincere place. I've been on my own for now almost 2 years
Mm-hmm.
since my separation and divorce. And I had to learn, I'm still learning how to be on my own because I have adult kids and a granddaughter. And I was in my house one day and I was like, I'm gonna cook some beans.
Mm-hmm.
Never cooked a pot of beans in my
Really?
life. Never. I was
And just as I was giving you credit for being indoctrinated into the culture.
I grew up on I grew up on Mr. Henry's Crowd of Peas right there on Broad when he was on Broad.
Uh-huh.
Right there at Broad and Bienville. Mr. Henry's had those Crowd of Peas and rice with cornbread and okra and a fresh piece of catfish.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned about field, like I used to shuck peas as a kid. So I had to go out and pull peas and shuck them as a little girl. So I knew about peas and beans and all of those legumes, right?
Uh-huh.
However, I've eaten beans and rice here. I've smelled, and even as a kid, 2 sisters, when I was pregnant with my kids, I would always smell the onions and the peppers on Mondays cooking down to get ready for the beans.
Yeah.
I just never cooked a pot myself.
Yeah.
So I'm in my house, and I said, I'm going to cook a pot of white beans. I went and got them camellias. Mm-hmm. See what I mean? I got some smoked turkey neck.
Starting to get it back.
I got some smoked turkey neck.
Uh-huh.
I got my onion and my peppers, my Trinity.
Uh-huh.
And I have a secret that I would share. Well, no, I'm not going to share it because I feel like it's ancestral.
Uh-huh.
I was in the kitchen. I said, Granddaddy, because my granddaddy was a chef. My mom's dad was a chef.
Mm-hmm.
My dad's mom also was the cook. She would get up at 3 and 4 a.m., which I learned is very precious in ancestral world time of elders when they move.
Yeah.
So she would get up between 3 and 5 a.m. and I would wake up to her. She would cook breakfast and dinner at the same time, right? So now, to get back to where I was, I'm in the kitchen, and I said, okay, ancestors, I need y'all help. I don't know what I'm doing, so y'all come on, help me. And I'm literally talking to one of my altars, telling them I need y'all help because I don't know what to do. And I get in the kitchen, and I've just started, and I filmed all this. In fact, it's on my TikTok. I'm cleaning my beans. I put my smoked turkey necks in the pot with the onion and peppers, cooking that down. I added some garlic because I learned garlic and garlic are two different things. I added some garlic.
I was today years old.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah.
I added my garlic and it's cooking now. It smells so good. And then the beans have been soaking overnight
Yeah.
and after I soaked them, you still got to wash the beans because you're washing off more of the starch and
You're
also.
just showing up,
Right,
try to get your credit
right.
back. All right.
Get my New Orleans credit, right? So I go to pour the beans, and I'm gonna say like my grandma, pour them beans in there, right? You heard like show up, pour them beans in there, and I let it cook for about 3 hours on low. I threw a bay leaf in there, right? I only threw one because I didn't want it to be over. Because I was like, what am I doing? I had all my seasonings, and I want to say I showed it on the video.
Yeah.
But my secret is cinnamon.
Mm.
They told me to add cinnamon.
Okay.
So cinnamon helps to cut the acidity, so you don't have if you have heartburn. It also gives a great digestive agent when you're eating the beans.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay, I put the cinnamon in there. And I'm cooking. Man. Then I said, I go further. And I remember my sis, because my manager's my sister. So I told her I'm doing this bean. So she come to the house at night. She said, wait, you cook some fresh fried chicken? Because she don't eat fried chicken. So I made these fried chicken tenders to go along with the beans. She said, We're sitting at the kitchen table in a meeting, eating beans and laughing because I loved how the culture of Mississippi, the culture of South Carolina, because we ain't talk about how the Geechee Gullah bloodline is all the way around here in New Orleans too, right? Because if you meet people, they'll start talking about North Carolina, South Carolina.
Yeah.
When I tell you our lineage is so strong and rich, and how connected we are, so I got my credit back. Bye-bye.
You did.
So
Stamp of approval.
thank you.
All right.
So I cooked my first pot of beans and knowing now these different things and knowing now how the connection, because I forgot the question you asked. Oh, no. You said what
What are you passionate
my
about
passion about?
besides
There we
music?
go. There we go. That's why I was like, wait.
I mean,
what's the passion?
you went on about this pot of beans and
Yeah,
cooking for
because
about
I was
5 minutes, so that's some
I'm
passion.
passionate about my beans because I went from there cooking a white. I cooked beans like 6 months straight because I was so proud of myself that I just took down a frozen bag of crowded peas like 2 weeks ago, added some more smoked turkey neck, and it tastes like I had just made them. So it's like, and then also wait, you got to cream the beans. So you got to smash some of them up in there. And another secret.
You're saying it's for the benefit of the people who are watching.
Yeah.
Because I already know. So
for the benefit of those who watch it, you gotta smash them beans to get that
Yeah.
creaminess. And then the other secret was my ex-husband told me this. He was cooking one day. He said, "Put a half a stick of butter in there." And I was like, "All right." So I put some butter. So these different cultures, because his grandmother taught him.
Right.
And so when you start thinking about all of the passion, listen, you get and I'm getting spat now everywhere. You get food, you get music, and you get people. And you get passion.
Yeah.
Food, music, and Dewdrop used to have 2 pieces of bread, fried catfish out the grease, a fried chicken out the grease, fried pork chop out the grease. You had your juke joint meal, menus, you got your moonshine.
Yeah.
Because we won't talk about that no more. Hey,
Sure,
we can go back and get some moonshine. However, but you get food, people, and music. And you're going to have a great time.
The word that comes to mind is communal. And so it sounds like you're passionate about community.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In community, you have an I and a you, right? You and I, we create community.
Yeah.
Right? Because the you come before the I.
I like that.
I'll share.
I'm gonna steal that, okay? It can't be stealing if I told you. I'm
No,
gonna give my parenthetical references on that.
Listen, I give credit to ancestors because they're present right
Yeah.
now. And that was a reminder from them to remind us that in order for us to continue, we have to remember them because they came first.
Yeah.
And then here we are now. We are the community. We are one. We are, as Uncle Frankie said, we are one at the end of the day. You know what I'm saying? You have your joy and your pain. And I ain't trying to reference all his music.
Right.
However, when you start to really think about it, even at the Dewdrop Inn, as Lil Richard would sing about it. You and I create this beautiful space of love, joy, passion. I mean, even in scripture, we ain't trying to go to church. However, we are the church and we're fellowshipping. Where two or three are gathered. It's always spiritual. And so here we are.
Yeah, that's all beautiful. I got one more question for you.
Sure.
You just finished an album,
Yes.
right? It's called Cluster.
Yeah, clusters.
Clusters.
Uh-huh.
That is an intriguing title.
Yeah.
What's that about?
Man. Clusters was, man, clusters started back during the pandemic. I started writing 2019, this album. In fact, it goes further back to like 2009. Some of the songs on the album were produced. Shout out to my producers, strong arm. I produced a couple of songs. My nephew Rob Simmons, Strong Arm, Keenan McRae, Joe Dyson from New Orleans. So you have that Mississippi, Louisiana connection as well on this album, and Keenan, who's from New York, by the way, of Belize. So it's very spiritual. It's very thought provoking. Clusters is it when you take a cluster of something is always better than just one. I don't care. You think about it, like if you eating a pecan candy, you get that nice cluster piece,
Yeah.
and you eat into it, you can just bite into the creaminess and the pecans.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're eating, I don't know if you used to eat it, but you remember the Christmas candy? They used to sit in the glass bowl and they used to clump up, and it was sometimes it was like clusters of this like stripes, red, all of those.
Congeal.
You won't use scientific terminology. I'm gonna call it cluster candy, but no. But yeah, those pieces of candy reminded me of how I still to this day enjoy that nostalgic moment.
Yeah.
That I look for in Walgreens. To that moment, it takes me back to that moment, right? Going into my grandmother's garden in Mississippi and grabbing the greens out the ground, cleaning the greens, picking up the greens, a cluster of greens with my hand and eating it, right? A cluster of something is always better than just one. And so I thought about my life, born in Mississippi, raised in New Orleans, and everything I went through growing up, I was always protected. Because even when you start looking at scientifically the anatomy of how we're broken down, the neutrons, the electrons, the protons, and we all come together, these clusters make up who we are, right? And so this album is a cluster of my lineage from Africa to me learning who Jesus, what month Jesus was born is, my grandma would say, to my spiritual relationship of knowing God and loving God wholeheartedly, my ancestors, and then the elders like Miss Leona Tate, Baba Big Duck, Mama Dodie Smith, Baba Duck, who we just celebrated his life, now going on 2 years, Uncle Frankie, these elders and ancestors, how they have been pouring into me, I just didn't know. And I dedicated a song that I wrote about them. So you have a cluster of music that creates me.
Yeah.
So in order for me to be able to release these songs and share these experiences, I had to figure out why I had to cry so much. And then why this song, this old southern gospel song, I'll go if I have to go by myself. Why I had to do things by myself.
Yeah.
And it was allowing me to also create and build the cocoon to protect myself in order to blossom to who I am today. So clusters it's that combining of different moments in my life to create who I am today. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Thank
And we're honored that you'll be doing your album release with us
Our listening party and a release.
All right, on April 8th, Tuesday, April 8th. So
Yep,
we
our
are
listening party.
definitely looking forward to that. Tonya, it is always, today is no exception, a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank
And may
you,
you have
Kurt.
clusters of blessings
Oh,
on everything that you do.
you need to go ahead on and walk with your anointing. Let me just say, I know you're prolific with your, academia. However, you're in this space for, so I'm just gonna be obedient and give you your flowers because you have been obedient for your assignment. This is your assignment. And I want you to continue because you have this cluster of elders around you and ancestors. Your daddy, like he's like looking at you and just smiling. So continue to walk in that. You got you had to go through some what grandmama would say, the wash and rinsing, moments.
Yeah.
While you've been here.
Yeah.
However, you're in the right space right
Yeah.
now. So I'm just gonna be obedient and tell you congratulations in advance for what's about to happen
Thank you.
because this is yeah.
Thank you. I received that. I tried to run from it.
Yeah.
Unsuccessful. So I'm going to go ahead and receive that.
Yeah, go ahead, Bishop.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely, thank you.
All right.
Yeah.